choices.
Black love, black pride, black dignity, black honor. Show black power. Don't matter. Call 871-7878.
Monday morning on Sunrise, big traffic headaches as the work continues on 35W. We'll tell you what to avoid.
And the All-Star game you won't want to miss. Details Monday at 6:30.
Live from Minneapolis, Meet the Press. Here is our host, Marvin Kell.
Good day from the Hubert H. Humphrey Metrodome, the newest baseball park in the United States, where the All-Star game will be played on Tuesday in the shadow of a possible players' strike. Tomorrow, the Executive Committee of the Players Union meets in Chicago, fully empowered to set a strike deadline. Baseball is the national pastime, and all of this strike talk comes at the midway point of the 1985 season, a remarkable season for at least two reasons. Many of the 26 teams are setting attendance records at the very same time as many owners are claiming record losses. If anyone can make sense of the crazy business of baseball, it is our guest today on Meet the Press, Peter Ueberroth, the Commissioner of Baseball, who seems to personify a new entrepreneurial spirit in the United States. He ran the Olympics well enough to be selected Time Magazine's Man of the Year. Joining me today are my colleague Bonnie Anderson of NBC News and Pete Axthelm, sports columnist for Newsweek magazine. Before we begin our interview, let's get an update report on President Reagan's medical condition following his surgery yesterday. White House correspondent Chris Wallace is at the Bethesda Naval Hospital. Chris?
Marvin, all the news from here continues to be good, with both doctors and the president saying that Mr. Reagan's recovery is going very well.
White House spokesman Larry Speaks gave a mid-morning medical update, and he quoted the doctor who performed yesterday's surgery as saying the president is doing better at this point than 99.9% of patients who go through major surgery.
So far, Dr. Oler says it is a spectacular post-operative course. Vitals are rock stable. The president has required no pain medication overnight, and in fact, this morning he's virtually pain-free.
The patient agreed. Speaks quoted Mr. Reagan as saying, "I'm amazed at how good I feel." And after spending the night in the recovery room, the president returned this morning to his regular room here.
As he left the recovery room, he expressed the desire to walk to his room, but doctors intervened and he was wheeled down the hallway.
However, the strain of the last few days may have taken its toll on Mrs. Reagan, who appeared to be assisted by a Secret Service agent as she arrived at the hospital this morning. But Speaks said Mr. Reagan was already doing a little work, meeting briefly with Chief of Staff Donald Reagan to discuss the congressional battle over the budget.
The president expressed a strong desire to see action on the federal budget this week, and the president said, and this is a quote, "I want to emphasize this week."
Speaks said he expects Mr. Reagan to do some paperwork today, possibly work the phones tomorrow, so things are going well. The big remaining question, whether there was any cancer in that portion of Mr. Reagan's intestine that was removed. Test results are due tomorrow. Chris Wallace, NBC News at Bethesda Naval Hospital.
Thank you, Chris. As we said, our guest today on Meet the Press is Peter Ueberroth, the Commissioner of Baseball. We'll start with a tape report, a brief profile of the man and his problems. Baseball Commissioner Peter Ueberroth is a man who likes a challenge. The son of a salesman, Ueberroth broke his nose 5 times playing water polo in college. Later built a small travel agency into the second largest in the country and turned a $250 million profit on the Los Angeles Olympics. The Olympics helped stir a sense of pride and patriotism in this country and focus the public spotlight on Ueberroth. This sudden attention led to talk of a political future for Ueberroth. He's a Republican, but Ueberroth claims he's too busy worrying about baseball to think about politics. He has plenty to worry about.
Nobody's there.
90% of the teams, Ueberroth says, are losing money. Fan rowdyism and violence are on the upswing. And drug use is threatening the very fabric of the game. For all his fans, Ueberroth is not without his critics. His proposed drug tests for baseball employees were dubbed grandstanding by the head of the Players Association.
This is, of course, a very sensitive issue. It's an inflammatory one, and it's an emotional one.
Ueberroth also was criticized by some for reinstating Mickey Mantle and Willie Mays to organize baseball.
Effective immediately.
After they had been banned for accepting jobs with gambling casinos. Ueberroth's current worry is a possible late-season players' strike. At stake is how to divide up a new $180 million television package. A players' strike in 1981 lasted 50 days and distorted the national pastime for that season. Welcome, Mr. Ueberroth, to Meet the Press, and let's start with the issue of the strike. You have described yourself as neutral between the owners and the players, so from that kind of neutral position, you can just level with us and tell us whether you think there's going to be a strike.
I think there's a fairly good chance. The strike is a failure. They're going to set a date tomorrow, which is being called a strike date. It's not a strike date, it's a failure date. It means both sides have failed to come together. It's not a victory for anybody. The fans lose, the players lose, the owners lose, everybody loses. So let's hope they're effective. Let's hope the two sides get to the table and do a good job.
In recent weeks, you said that at that time you would not interfere to force a settlement between the players and the owners. If there is no settlement soon, will you interfere, and at what point?
Well, collective bargaining is part of our country, and it's the laws are pretty strict. Someone from the outside can't come in and start taking over and telling people what to do. Both sides are very well represented with serious people. They should do their job. I don't see my role of coming in here and sweeping away and trying to be grandstanding in any way. I just want them to be successful, and successful now.
What about the statements about the owners losing money, assuming that these books that have been opened are valid? How can fans and or players be expected to sympathize in a free market if an owner went and paid $1 million for a guy who isn't putting anybody in the stands, isn't helping the team win, and now we're supposed to step back and say, wow, the owners really need help. They need a salary cap because they have failed to handle a free market situation?
Well, first of all, for 9 years, I guess, everyone wanted to see the books. And I thought by forcing that, it would take away some of the hue and cry of that people are lying to each other. Now, the books are out there for everyone to see. And the truth is, you can argue over how much the loss is, but the loss is very real. Baseball teams are losing money. I don't take the owner's position. I don't take the player's position. But I think both sides at the table are beginning to get serious. But let's not have an industry that's going to be going down the tubes, having terrible problems that they can't recover from. I think they're going to work together and solve the problem. Now, player salaries is not the only issue. There's many economic issues in baseball. And I think the Players Association is intelligent. I think they're going to address those issues. And in this case, the owners have selected two very good people, steeped in baseball, Lee MacPhail and Barry Ronan. I think they'll do a good job. I'm trying to keep the rhetoric down and let them get their job done.
Mr. Ueberroth, we got many more questions than we've got time, and Meet the Press will be back right after these messages.
Meet the Press, the world's longest-running television program, is sponsored by the Archer Daniels Midland Company. ADM, helping America use its abundance to meet the world's needs.
If you took out everything we make for a loaf of bread, it wouldn't be a loaf of bread. If you took out everything we make for a jar of peanut butter, it wouldn't be a jar of peanut butter. The fact is, a lot of foods and beverages just wouldn't be the same without the ingredients we make at the Archer Daniels Midland Company. Flours, sweeteners, vegetable oils, soy proteins, as well as livestock and poultry feeds, which provide for meat, eggs, and dairy products. At ADM, we produce hundreds of popular food ingredients from America's most abundant crops, and we produce them efficiently, so that food doesn't end up taking too big a bite out of your budget. You won't find the name ADM on your grocer's shelves, but from now on, you'll know we're there.
We are back on Meet the Press from the Metrodome in Minneapolis with Peter Ueberroth, the Commissioner of Baseball. You said at the beginning of the program that there is some kind of a good chance of a strike. I forget your exact words. I hear August 15th as the date that awful lot of people are talking about. Is that what you think is going to happen at that time?
They'll decide tomorrow. The players will meet with the Players Association representatives. I think August 15th is a good guess, but it's a pure guess. It could be August 1st, it could be September 1st. As far as I'm concerned, sooner the better. Let's get it over with. Let's get the strike behind us.
How much trouble is baseball in? We hear, again, that the owners are losing millions of dollars, yet attendance is up. There are drug problems. There's problems, again, with the contract, possible strikes. How much trouble is baseball in?
Well, there's some real problems. You see franchises starting to talk about moving out of cities like Cleveland and Pittsburgh and other places. That would be devastating to those cities. I'm against it. I don't want it to happen. But when there's financial losses of $6 and $7 million every year, compounding, and it's not just players. The players are doing their job on the field of play. This franchise where we are today is an example of a community turning around and making baseball exciting here, getting the community behind it, and starting to squeeze that gap down of losses, and with good leadership. And so there's many things we have to do, and this labor negotiation is not the whole issue.
I'd like to go back to the question of free market. Why would owners go in and ask for a salary cap idea to police themselves, save themselves from themselves? Why couldn't it work, as many people envisioned it would work when free agency began, that they would say, if indeed everyone's losing these vast sums of money, that when a ball player came on the open market, the ball players simply wouldn't command the kind of money that they're getting today?
Well, I'm a free market system individual, so I'm not going to take the owner's position there. I would agree more with what you say. I think that a ball player, if he has a short career, if he can earn an awful lot of money because he's in the top 30 out of millions of people in this country. I mean, millions of youngsters play baseball. If you're in the top 30 in a rock business, rock concert business, top 30 in most businesses, you're very highly paid. So I really am not, for a salary cap per se. But if you have a system that's not working, let's take a look at it and see if you can't make it work better for both sides.
But if you're in the free market system, there's something that you're saying that seems to be inconsistent philosophically. Why do you oppose, for example, I know I come from Washington and work there, so I have perhaps a bias on why we can't get a team in Washington. But if Washington can pull together the money,
right,
free enterprise,
right,
and we could buy that team in Pittsburgh and bring it to Washington, why do you object?
Well, I would object if Pittsburgh had a fair chance. Pittsburgh ownership is not with roots in Pittsburgh. It's a very fine family headquartered in Columbus, Ohio, and also owned by a TV company or an entertainment company, two owners outside of Pittsburgh. If there was solid ownership in Pittsburgh and a long-term chance for Pittsburgh, and then they failed, all right, then I could accept your argument. But I think baseball has a responsibility to move into Washington when Washington is ready and leave Pittsburgh alone. Let the fans in Pittsburgh continue to have a team. In Pittsburgh,
but what's wrong with the free market system? I mean, that's what you're saying. Wouldn't the free market system work better if Pittsburgh can't make it and Washington can? I'm not just saying Washington, but other cities as well, Denver. Why can't they have it according to the system that you say you're supporting?
Your argument doesn't hold water for me.
Why?
Washington's had teams move out twice, and it's been devastating, I think, to the community, and they want to do it again. We've set criteria that any community can go and qualify for. And we want Pittsburgh to have a chance to qualify itself. It doesn't qualify now. It needs solid ownership by the people in the community there. And my role is going to be clear. I mean, I'll argue with anybody. We're going to keep Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh, and we're going to look very seriously at Washington and other cities to expand. Any community in America that has a population base that's large like that in 5 or 6 other cities should have Major League Baseball. So Major League Baseball must take a look at it. It set 3 criteria. As soon as they qualify, let's move into those communities.
Which cities have the greatest chance of getting a team, so we can tell everyone they heard it here first?
Yeah,
why didn't you give us an idea who are the front runners?
I hope I don't leave any out. I think that Washington, D.C., and Denver, and Vancouver, Indianapolis, Tampa, St. Pete, Phoenix, New Jersey are amongst the cities that look very good. All of them have the fan base. They have sometimes politicians who are talking, but I have to see the nuts and bolts, dollars and cents of political support. That's the other criteria. And the last criteria is ownership, local ownership, with roots in the community, that believe in the community, that can rally the community like they've done in Minneapolis. This place was not going to have a baseball team some 2 years ago, but the community got spirited, they got fine local ownership, and it's working.
How many teams will there be, and by when? When will the teams
Oh, that's I'm not going to put deadlines and how many, but there will be more. And as far as the commissioner believes, sooner is better than later.
Mr. Ueberroth, Meet the Press will be back right after these messages.
The AT&T personal computer has all the speed, graphics, and power your business needs today. As those needs change, your AT&T PC will keep up with new features, enhancements, getting better all the time. The right choice today, tomorrow, and as time goes by. The AT&T PCs, the computers with the future built in. From AT&T, the right choice.
The 1985 Plymouth Reliant Super K, the best six-passenger car value in America. Now with 8.8 annual percentage rate financing for qualified buyers. Monthly payments over 5 years can be as low as $130 for Reliant, or get $400 cash back. The choice is yours. 8.8 financing or $400 cash back on Reliant K, backed by Plymouth's 5-year or 50,000-mile protection plan. Match it.
This is Bill McAtee, and we hope you'll be with us later today here on NBC for the final round of the Anheuser-Busch Golf Classic. Then after golf at 4:30 Eastern Time, it's boxing on Sports World. Former junior lightweight champion Cornelius Boza Edwards against John Montes later today on NBC.
We are back on Meet the Press from the Metrodome in Minneapolis with Peter Ueberroth, the Commissioner of Baseball. Mr. Commissioner, drugs. You've made a big issue of that in Major League Baseball. There are indictments in Pittsburgh. So far as you know, are any Major League players now involved with drugs?
Very direct answer, yes, is the answer to the question. But drugs are attacking the underbelly of this country terribly. It's in your industry, it's in every part of society, and somebody had to say enough is enough. Baseball said enough is enough, and we're going after that problem. We will eliminate drugs from baseball so we can be one part of society that can stand up tall and say there's no longer a problem in baseball. When we've done that, we'll be the role model we should be for kids across America, and we'll be a leading edge for other sports to follow. We're a setup. Higher salaries, leisure time, but you find me any part of society where drugs have not made inroads recently, I'd be surprised. So we're going to be successful. We've taken a hard stand. I'll be criticized for it, but I don't care. We're going to do it, and we're going to do it right.
You were supposed to start in July, as I remember, in the minor leagues. Have you done that yet?
Absolutely.
You've done
and it's
that.
Working. Okay. And we're going to take the fear factor away, and all of baseball will join eventually.
What about the idea that everyone from the owners on down that you have jurisdiction over would be tested? Has any owner been tested?
Sure. It's ongoing, and I expect to be. They haven't gotten to me lately, but I've been moving around. But we'll get it. The testing program. Testing is proved in the military in this country. It's proved everywhere it's done. It's happening with airline pilots. It's happening with all parts of society. It's a deterrent. Gets people off the thing. And you've got to fight back. If you think you're just going to sit there and hope the drugs go away, you're making a foolish statement. Baseball is going to eliminate it. And if we're first, good. And we're going to be pleased to do that. And many other parts of society will domino in the same direction.
Wasn't your program initially aimed towards the players? And how realistic is it to expect that they will voluntarily allow themselves to be tested, seeing that the Players Association has a different agreement?
There's not sharp disagreement. They're coming with us. They're helping with drug ads, telling on television, telling kids, don't be dumb, stay off the stuff. We're going to win that battle. We're doing all the minor leaguers, some 3,000, there's 600 and some major leaguers. And so each youngster that graduates to the major leagues is going to be part of a testing program that he's not frightened of, that is helpful. We're going to get help to youngsters, baseball players, early on and eliminate the problem. Instead of having what's happened, as you publicized very clearly, some ball players have gotten in real trouble. We're going to eliminate that as a problem.
When you mention a domino effect, are you really suggesting that all through society, that perhaps we would come to a time when regardless of what clauses there might be in the Bill of Rights, that every company in every form of society should have the right to randomly test its employees?
I'll tell you, when there's a problem, you have to do something about it. I don't think you go to all of society. I don't think it's going to affect farmers much in Nebraska and a lot of places. But I think airline pilots, where there's been a problem, And I think most of them are testing now. And I'm in favor of that. Bus drivers, if they're going to go off the side of a road because of drugs, I think there's a responsibility. Baseball players are the idols of millions of fans. Unpopular as it may sound, you've got to do something about a problem. If you sit back and fold your arms and hope it goes away, it's not going to happen.
Mr. Ueberroth, the Korean Olympics, how likely is it that they will have the same problem in terms of a boycott? And if there is a boycott, can the Olympics survive?
Well, Korean Olympics are a different kind of thing. I would watch the Asian Games in 1986 to see how well they come off. They're going to be in Seoul, Korea, and I'd make judgments from there. China coming to our games for the first time. Romania breaking from the Soviets coming to our games. We had 140 nations. We showed friendship around the world. I think that they will not have that problem. The two superpowers have learned how exceedingly dumb it is to use athletes as political tools. And so I don't think the Soviet Union, the United States, is going to have another kind of boycott of Olympic Games. But there's other problems on the horizon for the Korean Games, and I'd watch the Asian Games closely.
What gives you that kind of confidence that the two superpowers won't be dumb yet again?
Well, they've tried it. They should have learned from Montreal. The blacks from Africa boycotting didn't help apartheid, and they should have learned, but we didn't learn in the United States. We were to stop Afghanistan, if you remember. Well, if you look at the morning paper, it had no effect many, many years later. I think they've both learned, but they've also learned the bitter hurt. Their athletes, the rejection of the athletes, the bitter hurt in their own country. The Soviet Union is suffering so much throughout in world opinion. And even their closest countries, East Germans, the Bulgarians, are so angry that their athletes didn't have a chance to compete over non-issues. And then they see the standing ovation given Romania, and see what happened to standing ovation given to China, and how well their athletes did. And so it's a bitter lesson.
Mr. Ueberroth, a political question. You knew it would come up. In polls in California, you're rated very high. People say that you might consider running for the Republican Senate seat next year. Any truth to that at all?
No.
Would you like to bat it out of the ballpark here? Is there absolutely, under no circumstances, are you going to enter politics?
Let me think of an answer. No. No. I don't see Pete Ueberroth as a political candidate trying to be on both sides of issues and running around. I try to run things well. I try to manage. I try to make effect. And maybe someday, many years hence, we've got a lot to do in baseball. I could do something that might be an appointed role, but I don't see me campaigning for anything.
Mr. Ueberroth, thanks very much. Your time's up. Thanks for being our guest on Meet the Press.
Thank you.
Bonnie, Pete, and I will be back right after these messages.
Today, the fastest growing octane booster in America is lead-free ethanol. And not just because it's good for cars. Ethanol is boosting the economy, too, stimulating new business, creating jobs, and improving the balance of trade by cutting our bill for imported oil. It's also helping to fuel the recovery of American agriculture by providing a huge new market for corn, our most abundant crop. As popular as they've already become, cleaner-burning ethanol blends are expected to double in volume in the next few years. Not bad for a fuel that's only been around since 1978. But then, with all it has going for it, no wonder ethanol has taken off so fast.
The 1985 Plymouth Reliant Super K, the best six-passenger car value in America. Now with 8.8 annual percentage rate financing for qualified buyers. Monthly payments over 5 years can be as low as $130 for Reliant, or get $400 cash back. The choice is yours. 8.8 financing or $400 cash back on Reliant K, backed by Plymouth's 5-year or 50,000-mile protection plan. Match it.
We can be a lifeline for a hard line. We can help to make your business grow. For your computer needs, for where your future leads, we're the right choice wherever you go.
Whether it's telephones, long distance, information systems, or computers,
The right choice, AT&T.
are back on Meet the Press from the Metrodome in Minneapolis. Pete, did you believe the commissioner when he said no twice on politics?
You know, I finally decided to believe him, because when he gave that laundry list trying to make every city in the country think they might get a baseball franchise, he left out both Bakersfield and Sacramento. So how could he be running for office in California? On a more serious level, I happen to agree that he would probably not want to campaign, although he might be very good at it, because one of the things that made the Olympics really work, Marvin, is that Peter was never hesitant to offend the established federations, the local police chief, anybody that he had to offend to make things work smoothly on his own terms. That probably doesn't really make a campaigner.
No, but do you have the impression from a man like this that he would be apt to devote his energies right now to trying to head off a baseball strike? You can't really be neutral as the commissioner of baseball, can you? Bonnie, what do you think?
Well, I'm wondering, again, do you think he will jump in with both feet? Do you think he will be decisive? He seemed to be playing both sides of the field today without really saying, I will get involved, no, I won't get involved, and talking about expansion, not really wanting to be committed on what teams. I'm wondering.
Well, I think my guess will be that in contrast to Commissioner Kuhn during the last strike, that eventually Peter Ueberroth will take a forceful role. Obviously, under the terms of collective bargaining, he can't take it during the bargaining leading up to the situation, but I think he will do something, even if it is somewhat cosmetic. I don't think he's going to sit back and let America joke, as they did about Bowie Kuhn, that this strike never would have happened if Bowie Kuhn were alive today.
Yeah, what about the drugs? I had the impression from what the commissioner was saying that he is devoting himself and the entire power of his office behind a drive to eliminate drugs. Is it realistic? Can it be eliminated?
I'm sure he's probably wondering the same thing, but giving it a full shot. It's a problem that he said goes throughout society, and perhaps he wants baseball to be held up as the institution where eliminating drugs began. He brought honor back to the United States with the Olympics, and he gave the United States a shot in the arm. Perhaps it'll work.
Okay, well, I want to thank both of you for joining me. Bonnie, Pete Axhelm. I also want to thank the local NBC affiliate, WUSA, for being so helpful to us as well. And I'd like to close on a personal note. All my life, I have lived with the dream that when I grow up, I'm going to be a play-by-play announcer for the New York Yankees. Well, today, I got to second base, and for many times in my life, I never thought I'd get to first. Thank you all for joining us. I am Marvin Kalb, saying goodbye from Meet the Press, and we hope to see you next Sunday.
For a printed transcript of Meet the Press, send $1 and a stamped self-addressed envelope to Kelly Press, Box 8648, Washington, D.C. 20011. Meet the Press has been sponsored by AT&T, the computers with the future built in. AT&T, the right choice. And by the Archer Daniels Midland Company. Tonight on NBC Nightly News with John Palmer, doctors describe President Reagan's recovery as spectacular following intestinal surgery. That and other stories tonight on NBC Nightly News. Then tomorrow morning for the latest in news, business, weather, and sports. Wake up with NBC News at sunrise, followed by the Today Show with Jane Pauley and Bryant Gumbel.
Bryant Gumbel next week on Today, Treasury Secretary James Baker, also Vanessa Redgrave and Billy Crystal.
He looks marvelous, doesn't he?
I'm Jane Pauley. We'll also talk with track star Mary Decker Slaney and Zola Budd, plus celebrate the 30th anniversary of Disneyland and preview the All-Star Game.
Join us all next week on Today.